Jorb, I love gear. You're looking and listening today at Roland's JX-3P. This is a 6-voice, 2 DCO analog polysynth, originally released in 1983, which is only 2 years after the Jupiter 8, 1 year after the Juno 60, the same year as the Jupiter 6, and 1 year earlier than the Juno 106, the one that everybody actually knows about. I say this because I think it's valuable to judge a synth next to its contemporaries, what market it was intended for, what were the available alternatives at the time, etc., etc. But in today's market, which is what we are talking about, you're probably going to buy this now and not in 1983. It's competing with a lot of options that are more sophisticated, smaller, cheaper, that have less risk of repair, etc., etc. And that sort of takes me to what I'm really going to focus on talking about today and the points I'm trying to make. I want to make this video from the perspective of somebody who has seen one of these show up on Craigslist or Reverb or Facebook Marketplace, wherever you buy your used gear, and you're looking for a little more information to find out if this synth is worth your time or your money or your commitment in general. So, if you are subscribed, I really do appreciate you coming back. It sincerely means a lot. If you aren't, you probably found this video from searching or browsing. That to me says you're already seeking out synth content. Well, other than encouraging you to look around my channel, maybe see a video where I copy all of the presets from the JX-3P onto the DeepMind, or a video where I talk about all the synths I own in general. I have too much shit. If you do subscribe, you'll be introduced to new gear, new concepts, new ideas, and you won't even have to search for it next time. It'll get sent right to you, okay? There's my stupid pitch. Let us get back to some information. We have 6 voices, 2 DCOs each. They can be a sawtooth. Which one's first? 10% pulse wave. 50% pulse. You do not have pulse width modulation, unfortunately. Oscillator 2 has all the same waveforms, plus noise. It's nice to have that on a separate volume control, but we'll take it where we can get it. You have a crossfader to go between them. Oscillator 2 has its own octave setting, and its own coarse and fine tune, which we love. They can be synced, or you can do the metal cross mod. And I'm going to look up what it is and put it on screen because I don't think I'd describe it in good enough detail. But it's somewhere between like a cross mod and a ring modulator. But we're off now, and we'll put our mix at 50%. So you can hear both of them. They sound wonderful, dude. We have a 4-pole resonant filter. Okay. And a little more. And all the way. Let's put on pitch tracking to see if it's self-resonant in a way that we like. Seems to be. Get that all back. Lovely. We have one envelope that controls both our VCA and our VCF, and a variable envelope amount. You can also have your VCA be just a gate. So as long as you're holding the key press, the VCA is all the way open. hear the filter opening when you have it. Like that, but you don't get any release. So let's leave it back on gate. Sorry, leave it back on envelope. A little more release. We have one LFO, which can go to the filter, or the pitch of one or both oscillators. They share an amount knob, okay, but they can be designated to be controlled or not by the LFO and the envelope, which let's listen to that. Can be fun with sync. We won't do that now, and it can be positive or negative. But go back to... But. Back to our LFO. It can be a sine wave, or a square, or a stepped random. I'll turn the resonance up so you can sort of hear that clearly. Jumps around through a bunch of random values. Go back to the sine wave, and you have a delay time to bring it in. So let's do, if I turn the delay time up, there you go. And finally, the pièce de résistance chorus. What a lovely, lovely patch. You just watch me do that all with the programmer, the PG200. So I'm going to take it off. And it's magnets on the bottom. How slick is that? What you see in its stead is its sort of chalk outline. We have this edit map, and you'll see that we have a bunch of numbers in white, a bunch of numbers in red, and those are our two edit groups here, okay? So if I want to get to, for example, my cutoff frequency, that's red and 1. So I'm going to play a chord. Red means group B. We pick our number here, and the solid light tells us where we're at. We control everything with the one fader. Pretty cool. Okay, filters all the way up. Let's go to group A and edit number 1 again. So this is the range of DCO1. And our fader's not doing anything. We use these preset buttons to select any options for a switch. Since there's only 3, the first 3 matter. Okay. What's another good example of that? The chorus, for example, we can do that with. So we have group B and 9. A is off. B is on. You can watch this light go on and off. Just the same. Okay, so it's not hard to program. It just can take some time to get used to. And when you learn things like, oh, okay, group B, 13 is my attack, and then my decay is 14, and 15 is my sustain, and 16 is my release. You get used to those things. The things you want to get to quickly, you can. Group B and then 1 is your cutoff. I think I changed patches on accident, so you just saw a pitfall of this because you're using these buttons for so many different things. But it's just getting used to where those are going to be. And I bring all this up because these sell most of the time separately. I'm going to put it back on. Now, I bring that all up because most of the time you will end up buying these separately. If they are together, here's some prices of ones that are used. I think last time I checked, it was between $1,200 and $1,500 for a reasonably good condition JX-3P with the PG200 separately, and I think this is where the deals can really happen, okay? I paid $558 for this JX-3P, and I knew it was broken. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then the program was $415 alone, so we're already at about $1,000 for most, like, pretty good condition JX-3Ps. Without a PG200, you're going to be between $700 and $1,100 for just the synth, not the programmer. And so that, in today's market, there's a lot of competition for polysynths under $1,000. If you're not set completely on it being analog, things like the Cobalt 8 and the Argon 8 and the Hydrosynth, which have more voices and more control, built-in effects, they, on paper, kind of beat this. It's kind of a hard sell. What I'm trying to convince you of is if you can get one that's in close to good shape and do a little bit of work, then you can get a great deal. And the work I had to do on this one, actually, let's get people like arpeggios, right? There you go. something to enjoy while I talk. When I got this, not all the keys worked. The preset memory had died. I cut these wood sides out for it. So what you're going to see on screen is some phone videos I took while I was fixing this. I took all the keys off. I gave them a scrub. If you aren't familiar, lots of old synthesizers have a watch battery, a coin cell. CR2032, I believe, is a very common one. And because these patches are stored in a volatile RAM, they need to be powered all the time. Otherwise, that short-term memory will get lost. It'll forget that. And we've overcome that in recent synth designs. It's not often that you'll have a battery backup for patches, but in old ones, eventually those batteries will dry up and the synth will forget its presets. And so that can manifest in a few ways. Things might sound garbled, or you might hear nothing, or after changing a bunch of parameters, you can get them into a range that works. But in general, you can diagnose that without even being with the synth, just asking the right questions. That's one of the things that made me think, okay, I know how to fix this. As far as fixing the keys, sometimes bad keys is just bad or dirty contacts, so you just rub a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on them. For this JX-3P specifically, some of the traces for the keyboard had corrosion enough that they weren't passing the signal at all or all the time, and so I bypassed that with a small little jumper cable. I just soldered it to either end, like a bypass, skipping the part of the track or the road or the trace, whatever you want to think of it as, that wasn't making a connection, and I made my own. So there is a reality, and I bring this all up not because I think you care about my experience, but because I think it's helpful to talk about what might happen when you own a vintage keyboard. Even though it works now, there's no promise that it'll keep working as long as I have it. In that same vein of it's kind of a tough sell in the modern market, the MIDI implementation is hardly note on or off, and I think you can send program changes, but you cannot use the MIDI while you have the PG200 plugged in. You cannot do them both at the same time, and by default it accepts on all channels. I believe there's a trick to get it to just accept on one, but it's not something you can save in memory or patch, etc., etc. So, to sort of summarize that, this is not super easy to fit into a lot of modern setups. You cannot install patches via SysX. A MIDI implementation sucks. It's not easy to use the programmer and the synth via MIDI at the same time. There are aftermarket mods to replace the processor with something that has pins to accept information from the programmer and MIDI at the same time, but that's an additional cost, and this is already quite a hard sell, I think. You've been listening to the sequencer and a lot of these little bits, and it is just as simple as you want it to be. You just hit right and then plug in exactly what you want. Okay, and if I want to rest, just hit that. Or a tie. Okay, wonderfully simple. Okay, that is all well and good, but if you're used to sequencing MIDI, what's the point in getting something that's not good at taking MIDI and saying, oh, well, it does have a sequencer. So I bring this all up at first because I want to end with what is good about this, and I think it sounds pretty cool, and it's simple in a way that makes it really fun to interact with. And I know I'm saying that from the lens of somebody who does have the PG200, and I'm not constantly referencing this little data map, and I'm not always trying to say, shit, where's my cutoff, where's my pitch, etc., etc. But I think it sounds quite good, and so I'll play a few of my other patches here. So all that said and done, it sounds like I don't like this. It sounds like I'm saying this isn't worth your time or your money. But what does this really offer us if there are other things available for less money these days that can do more? And it is just a less exciting Juno to some people, or a totally, low budget attempt at making something that can sell like the Jupiter. This, and in a lot of ways also the JX-3P, are kind of your best affordable ways to get into vintage Roland synthesizers. Okay, so I hope you agree with me on that. You're probably watching this because you sort of do. And I do think that that's why this is still worth talking about. The JX-3P is cool, it sounds good, and is interesting in its own right, is affordable in a way that Juno will never ever be again. There's no way prices will get to a reasonable level on any iteration of the Juno. These are not difficult to work on. It's not very complicated on the inside. There's not a lot of faders to clean out and work with. And so if you can get over the slightly slow programming, if you're comfortable cleaning some keys, replacing a battery, just a little bit of soldering, maybe some key contacts, you can get a vintage Roland 6-voice analog polysynth for less than, let's call, $700 or $800. And I think that is a very compelling value statement. This, with the PG200 for $1,500, I don't really think so. Unless you know for sure these are the sounds you want, unless you know for sure this is the synth you want, then it isn't worth it. If you just think they're cool, or it's something you're sort of interested in, that is an amount of money that I do not think is worth it. JX-3P on its own, we're now at or around $1,000. JX-3P that's a little bit broken, we'll call it $700 or $800 on Reverb, maybe a little less if you're lucky, like myself, and a little bit of work ahead of you, which you should not be afraid of. There's tons of resources to learn how to fix these things, and I'm happy to answer some questions about that, but not all of them. You can definitely get vintage Roland analog poly for less than $1,000, less than $900, $800, $700, and that to me is where this becomes really, really interesting. Vintage is special. I'm not saying it's better. I'm saying there's something about a 30, 40-year-old object that's still relevant to me and my interests, and still plugs into the mixer the same way, as something I could buy at Guitar Center today, and et cetera, et cetera. I think if you're curious about old synthesizers, or want to get into fixing, or want to try fixing old synthesizers, something that's well documented, like the Roland stuff, something that's well known, like the JX-3P, and something that is affordable, like one of these without the programmer, is a really excellent way to do that. So that's why I'm casting this as the best vintage Roland you can actually afford. So there you go. That's more or less everything I have to say. I haven't done a video like this in a while, so I do want feedback. And when I say a video like this, I mean where I sit down and I give you my thoughts on a synth, its place in the market, its value statement, etc., what is unique about it, what I like about it, blah, 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 blah. So I want feedback on that. I think in some ways I'm at my best when I'm meandering, and I think in some ways that's the least engaging sort of a video I can put up. So I try and structure about half of these, and then I'm off the cuff for the rest. So I want you to tell me what does and doesn't work. If you want to hear more sounds without me talking, I can do that. If you want to hear more talking without sounds, etc., etc. So there you go. I like the JX-3P. I'm not going to keep this. I do plan on selling it. The MIDI implementation is bad, and I have too many other polysynths to justify having this if I don't completely love it. So as soon as I finish this video, I'm actually going to take some photos with the same camera and get this sucker up on Facebook Marketplace, see if anybody local will buy it. So my name has been Jorb. I love gear. That really does include the JX-3P. I'll be sad to see it go. But I appreciate you watching, especially if you're subscribed, and especially that you made it to the end of the video. I sure do ramble. So thanks for watching. I really hope that I'll see you in the next one.